So finding the midpoint of a line, okay? So again, we're looking at coordinate geometry and we're looking at finding the midpoint of a line. Now finding the midpoint is very, very straightforward if you think about what you're actually doing. So what you're actually doing, to find the midpoint of a line, here we have a line. To find the midpoint, it's the middle between those 2 points. So just from looking at it, you can see that the midpoint will be around here. Okay? Now, in order to find the midpoint, you need to look at it and you need to think, how long is this line? And you need to find halfway across that line. So we can count, we can come in there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So obviously the midpoint is going to be 3 in from either side. So the midpoint in this case is going to be here. Okay. That brings us, well, I'll just label that first of all. So that is 5 and 4. So the midpoint between the points 2 and 4 and 8 and 4 is going to be 5 and 4. Okay. So you can see here the only thing that's changing is the x value. So everything in the y coordinates is the same. The y or the x coordinate goes from 2 to 8, and halfway between 2 and 8 is going to be 5. Okay. So halfway between 2 and 8 is going to be 5. And we can work that out easily because 8 or 2 plus 8 gives us 10. 10 divided by 2 gives us 5. We're going to look at this one next, right? So with this one, halfway between these 2 points is going to give us our value here for this one. So let's just look there. If we keep our x values and our y values, so our x value there is going to be 2 and 6. Here we're going to have 2 and 2. Okay. And halfway between the two of them is going to be 2 and 4. But just to make some observations, the x value is obviously staying the same. To find out what the y value was, it was halfway between 6 and 2. Okay? And halfway between 6 and 2, I can find that very, very easily. If I want to find halfway between 6 and 2, if I add 6 and 2 together, I get 8. And if I divide that by 2, I'll get 4. So in order to find halfway between 2 points, we just add them together and we divide by 2. So let's look at the next one. So the next one here, we have these points here. Okay, I'm just going to label those points. So if I label this 2 and 6, and if I label this one 4 and 2. Now, this one isn't as obvious. Okay, and the reason why it's not as obvious is because it's not horizontal or vertical. Now the line is slightly sideways, you could say. So, or sloped even. So to find halfway between these 2 points, and some of you might be able to spot that straight away, halfway between those 2 points I expect to be here. Okay, so halfway between those 2 points I expect that to be here. So what's my x coordinate in this case? My x coordinate in this case is going to be 3, and my y coordinate in this case is going to be 4. Okay, but based on what we've done so far, in order to find halfway between 2 and 4, if I add 2 and 4, I'll get 6, and if I divide it by 2, I'll get 3. If I add 6 and 2, I'll get 8, and if I divide it by 2, I'll get 4. So I can add them and divide by 2 to get my midpoint. We're going to move on now and try the last one. And the last one there is this one. So to get halfway between these 2 points, okay, I'd expect halfway to be here. Okay, so let's label that. So we've got our first coordinate there, which is 2 and 3. Our second coordinate there, which is 8 and 5. And halfway along those is going to be here. Now, if I add my 2 x values, 8 plus 2 gives me 10. 10 divided by 2 gives me 5. So I can see this point here is going to be 5. If I add my 2 y's, 3 plus 5 will give me 8. and 8 divided by 2 will give me 4. Let's check and see. Is this 0.54? Which it is. So the rule that I've come up with is I add my two x values and I divide by 2 to get my x coordinate. So I can say the midpoint, and I'll do it in the midpoint will be add my two x values. So let's call this one x1 and this one x2. So I can say x1 plus x2 and divide by 2. That'll be my x coordinate. And to get my y coordinate, I'll say y1 plus y2. So y1, y2 and divide by 2. y1 plus y2 and divide by 2. So that's the formula. I've derived that, but you can see there the formula is actually in the log tables, right? So this is the formula that I'm looking at there. This is what I use to find the midpoint between 2 points. But that formula is actually given to us in our log tables. Now, you wouldn't be too familiar with log tables because we haven't actually used log tables yet. But log tables, basically, log tables are what you're allowed to bring into your junior cert or your leaving cert. And it's a book of formulas, right? So you can see here in this book of formulas, you've got the midpoint, and it tells you the midpoint is x1 plus x2 divided by 2, x1 plus x2 divided by 2, comma, y1 plus y2 divided by 2, y1 plus y2 divided by 2. So you don't actually need to learn that off, but at this stage I expect you to have a fair understanding of where it comes from. You're just adding your x's and divide by 2, adding your y's and divide by 2 to get the midpoint. Okay? So we'll start off there, question 1, and in the given grid shows 4 points A, B, C, and D. Write down the coordinates of each of these points. So write down the coordinates of each of those points. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fill in those coordinates there now. So A we can see is equal to our x value, which comes first. Our x value is going to be -4, and our y value is going to be +3. For B, the x value is going to be 2, and the y value is going to be +3. For C, the x value is going to be 2, and the y value is going to be -1. And for D is -4 and -3. Okay. So next we need to find the midpoint between AB. So the midpoint between AB. Now, I would imagine that the midpoint is going to be here. And you can see that because you've got 3 to the left and you've got 3 to the right. So the midpoint in the middle is going to be this point here, which would be -1, 3. But we need to be able to prove that, and we're going to have to prove that using the formula from the log tables. And you can see there that the formula from the log tables is the midpoint is equal to your two x values added together divided by 2, and your two y values added together and divided by 2. So let's fill that in. So your two x values, so we'll say the midpoint for AB, so the midpoint for AB will be your x values added together divided by 2. So it's going to be x1 plus x2 divided by 2, y1 plus y2 divided by 2. Now, let's label what we have. We've got x1, y1, x2, y2. So, in terms of labeling your points, your x value always comes first, your y value always comes second, and I'm labeling these both 1 because they're both in the first coordinate that I'm using. Okay? When you label this one, your x value comes first, your y value comes second, and I'm labeling these both 2 because they're both in the second coordinate that I'm dealing with. So it's very important that these represent the first coordinate, these represent the second coordinate. So I'm going to fill in those values now. So x1 is going to be -4 plus x2, which is 2, all divided by 2, comma y1, which is 3. So you can see there all I'm doing is adding my y values, plus my second y coordinate is going to be 3. And if I divide that by 2, so that will give me negative 2 over 2, and that will give me 6 over 2. And negative 2 divided by 2 is negative 1. 6 divided by 2 is 6. Or 3 even, sorry. So you can see there that point is going to be negative 1, 3. And negative 1, 3 is going to be here. So negative 1, 3 is that point there. Negative 1, 3. Okay. So that's that one sorted. So the midpoint of AB is going to be negative 1, 3. So you can see there, just in case you're unsure, that's going 1, 2, 3 that way. And obviously this is going to be 1, 2, 3 that way. So the midpoint is negative 1, 3. So part 2 there asks for the midpoint of BC. So we need to find the midpoint of BC. You can see BC is here. Okay. And the midpoint there of BC is going to be halfway between B and halfway between C. So we can see that there's 1, 2, and 1, 2. So the midpoint I would expect to be here. But I need to be able to prove that. So how I prove that is I use the midpoint formula. So the midpoint formula is very simple. Midpoint of BC this time. And how I get the midpoint is I add my x values and divide by 2. Add my y values and divide by 2. So I need to label them. So I've got an x value here and a y value. So I'm going to start off by labeling my first coordinate. I've got an x value and I've got a y value. In my second coordinate, I've got an x value and I've got a y value. But it's very important that I realize this is from the first coordinate and this is from the second coordinate. Okay. Next thing that I need to do is I need to fill in those values here. So x1 is going to be 2 plus x2, which is going to be 2, and divide by 2. So you can see there the x1 came from here, so 2 plus x2, which is 2. My y values is going to be y1, which in this case is 3, plus my second y value, which is negative 1. So if I add a negative, what I'm actually doing, I can put in plus minus, but plus minus just seems silly. Because if I add a negative, what I'm actually doing is I'm just subtracting. So all I'm really doing is just subtracting. Okay? So 2 plus 2 is 4 divided by 2. And here I've got 3 take away 1, which is 2 divided by 2. So that gives me an answer of 2 and 1. So the midpoint there is going to be 2, 1. And I can see the midpoint, what I estimated it was going to be, was here, which is 2, 1. So I know I'm correct. Okay. So the last part of this question is asking you for the midpoint of AD. Okay. And the line AD, or the line segment AD, is from A to D, which is this here. And they want us to find the midpoint. If I was to guess, I would imagine it would be there, because that's 3 away, and this is 3 away. So I'd know when I have a grid like this, it's very easy to see the midpoint, but I need to be able to calculate it using the formula. And with that formula, I'm just going to do that now. So the midpoint is going to be your x values added together, x1 plus x2 all divided by 2, comma y1 plus y2 all divided by 2. So it's your x values added together divided by 2, your y values added together divided by 2. The important thing is how you label these points, and how we label these points is very, very simple. So we're going between A and D. So I'm going to go to point A first, and I'm going to label that X and Y. Okay? And looking at point D2, which is x and y, because they're x values and y values. This is the coordinates that they are. So I need to label these, and how I'm going to label them is I'm going to label x and y in the first coordinate as x1, y1, and the x and y coordinates in the second coordinate as x2, y2. Okay, so these are in the first coordinates, so that's x1, y1. These are in the second coordinates, so that's x2, y2. And all I need to do now is I need to fill in the formula, and that's quite straightforward. I just need to be careful of negatives. So x1. So x1 is going to be -4 plus -4. So you can see there I'm adding -4 and -4. If I add them together, I'll get plus a -4 all divided by 2. And my y coordinates will be y1, which is 3, plus -3, and divide that by 2. So effectively what I'm doing there is I'm saying -4 minus 4 divided by 2. And here I'm saying 3 minus 3 divided by 2. Okay, so that'll give me -8 divided by 2. And this will give me 0 divided by 2. So that'll give me -4 and 0. So the coordinate that I'm looking at there is -4 and 0, and that is here. So that's -4 and 0. Just here, it's just basic skills of algebra. -4 plus -4 just means -4 minus 4. And similarly, if I've got a positive plus a negative, it's the same as just saying subtract. Okay, so that is point C. Or sorry, that's the midpoint of point AD. Okay, midpoint of point AD.